What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people who share challenges, encourage healing, and explore the possibilities that life has to offer. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of What If You Could. And today's guest is Dr. Karen Vizer. And I just want to share with you very quickly Karen's bio so you know who Karen is and what she's about and why she's so important, especially in today's world. So, Karen, from the beginning, knew she was destined to be different. As a clairaudient child, she heard, sensed, and just knew things that others didn't. During high school, as she was studying astrology and numerology, she had a vision about using her abilities to heal people. While spending the next several years in the medical field, she realized that the path she was on focused on disease management instead of true healing. Instead, Karen realized that there was a better way, and she could combine her clairaudience with coaching to shift belief systems. That's when Karen made a decision to study under coaching legend Thomas Leonard. As Karen was coaching, she learned that the human brain operates like a machine, and there are clear steps you can take to terminate its unnatural negative programming. Additionally, Karen learned that knowing one's authentic self is crucial to creating his or her desired realities. Identity or self concept is everything, and your identity creates your results. Karen is the founder of the Identity Makeover Experience. Today, Karen leads the Significance Movement. When you embody that you matter and everything you say and do matters, everything changes. Karen is uniquely qualified to lead her clients home to their real, authentic self. Your thoughts are things, your words cast spells. You are not too old, and it's never too late. Karen uses her clairaudient gifts to empower sensitive women and men who are seeking a stronger sense of self and identity. Karen's visionary framework helps her clients clarify and create their desired realities and self concepts with confidence. Karen is committed to empowering clients to crush their self doubt and design identities based on being rather than doing. She's also a founding member of Thomas Leonard's legendary coach, Phil Porter, with 29 years of experience in coaching. Karen uses her exceptional knowledge and training to help her clients overcome negative programming, belief systems, and narratives that are keeping them adrift. In doing so, Karen helps aspiring women to chart their own course through her intuition, intentionality, and inspiration. And with all that amazing stuff being said, please, everyone, welcome my guest, Dr. Karen Vizer. Well, I'll tell you what, that is a crazy impressive bio. And with all that's in there, I just want to say welcome to Dr. Karen Vizer. And Dr. Karen, going through your bio, I know most of the people probably who are listening, our viewers and our watchers, are thinking to themselves, there's so much there, right? But I mean, so my first question though, because I don't know, I'm not familiar with this, is a clairaudient child and a clairaudience. Can you just walk us through a clairaudient child and maybe at what age all of a sudden this came to you?
Yeah, it was very young, Gary. have always been psychic or intuitive or something. My parents used me as a barometer for buying decisions when I was a baby. If I didn't like the salesperson, they didn't buy. And it's kind of crazy when I think about it. But my dad, especially if it was a high money, a big decision, if I didn't like the salesperson, they didn't buy. And I've had some interesting experiences in life, but we all have capacities that we may or may not be aware of. Some of us are clairvoyant. We have a vision and we see auras, we see energy fields. I see fields. I don't necessarily see colors and auras. Some of us are clairaudient. We hear things. And what I used to say, because my maiden name is Rice, what I used to say is when the Rice Krispie voices talk, I listen. And I would crack my clients up and crack myself up every time I said that. But it's kind of like this listening that's not hearing through the ears, but it's like a listening. And then there's knowing, and then there's obviously the gut feeling. And so those are the clairs, and clairsentient is the feeling. And so basically, we all have one of those that is more highly developed and more operational than the others. And mine was the clairaudience hearing. And so when I was 9, I was laying on the grass and looking at the blades of grass, and I just had this voice say to me, everyone is like blades of grass, cells in the body of God. Like the lawn was, a metaphor for that. And so I went and told my parents that, and they were like, "Oh, that's nice, dear."
And I would imagine that's why. I mean, I'm a barefoot freak. I golf barefoot. I try to always be on the earth, right? I mean, so I'd imagine just the cells of the grass when we're walking barefoot on the grass is you knew at 9 that was going to intuitively be good for us.
Yeah. I mean, I was actually laying on the grass, and I've always loved sitting on the ground, being connected to the ground, to the trees, and that sort of thing. So it's been an interesting journey, but that when I work with clients, the deep listening is really what allows me to work with them to get the results they want so quickly, because of my expertise in knowing the conditioning, the programming, the mind control, the narratives, the constructs, the belief systems. I have expertise in that. So it's very easy for me when I listen and listen deeply I will just get an intuitive sense of where to go with someone. And it's magical and fun.
And so I would imagine there are times, I know with the grief recovery method that people come to you, they start somewhere, and you're able to know that's not the source of what's going on, right? What you came to me for, what you think your pain is, I'm already hearing that's not where it is, right? Do you feel that sometimes? You could find that right away?
Well, the way I work, Gary, is very intentional. It's not cookie cutter, and yes and no. So I always tell my clients, I want you to come with the outcome you want to experience. Now, the outcome they want to experience may not be really what they want. So if someone says, I want to remove my money blocks, there is a reason they want to remove their money blocks. And that reason is probably has something to do with a dream that they have, a desire that they have, a purpose that is calling them forward, and the belief that the money blocks are the barrier to being able to manifest that. And that may or may not be true. So if someone came to me and said that to me, I would ask them, what will you have? Who will you be without those money blocks? Because it's really not about doing, it's about being. And we've been programmed and conditioned to think that if I do this, I clear my money blocks. I will have that money, and then I'll be able to do that. And it's backwards. It's not the right flow. The right flow is to start with the end in mind. What do you want? Who do you want to be in the world? How do you want to show up? What is that gift that you want to express? So I always go deeper with my clients. So I'll write down everything. And I've had clients come with 3 pages of what they want to their first session. And I use muscle testing to navigate, because with someone's permission, I can use kinesiology and muscle test on myself to see where to go. And my intention is always to connect with the innate intelligence of that person, with their higher self, and to be guided. So it's not prescriptive. I'm not like, well, Gary, you need XYZ. That's not coming from my brain. It's coming from the intuitive connection, the soul connection, if you will, that we have. It's really very deep work, and it's very rapid and very effective, because we cut to the chase. I don't want to have the same conversation twice with anyone.
Yeah.
So I will muscle test. I'll go, okay, the optimal area to start is page 1. Yes, or okay, we're going to start on page 1. It would be another page. No, okay, we're going to start on page 1. Okay, it's the top half of the page, bottom half of the page. And then, okay, it's this, and so I can narrow it down very quickly to, okay, it might be that the person has an idea that they're unworthy, that they're undeserving, like, who am I to do this? And so then we go and we look at, what are the constructs? What are the narratives? What is the meaning that was assigned to an event? What is the trauma? And it's not like talk therapy where I'm going, now, what happened when you were 7, blah, 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 blah. I might ask that question, but, it's more like, who was a 7-year-old? What was going on in her life?
Is there a lot of manifestation with it? Are you getting people to try to manifest these things? Or are you working on such a deeper level that manifestation's kind of up there?
It's a very deep level, and yes, there is manifestation. For example, I have a client in Europe who came to me. I mean, she's worked with me off and on for years, but a couple of years ago, she was actually considering divorce. And she and her husband weren't doing well, and she felt very unfulfilled. And what I know is that what you're seeking is seeking you. So she wanted to stay in her marriage, but she was not happy in her marriage. And it's the inside work, because the question then became, who do you have to be? Because it's not his fault. You two are dancing a dance. You've been dancing for 18 years. You're both here. If you say, I don't like this dance anymore, I'm going to dance that dance, and you communicate that with that person, they have the opportunity to dance that dance with you as well. And so it took, she had to develop boundaries. She had to get clear about what she wanted. She had to allow herself to want something for herself, because many women and men too, when they're all about their family and growing their children, and for women, they sacrifice themselves for their children, and then the children are out, and it's like they don't know who they are, and it's a loss,
Yeah.
And so we worked together, and in about 6 months, because she changed, her experience of her husband changed.
Mhm.
And she was able to speak to him and say, like, one of her complaints would be that she would tell him she wanted to go out for a romantic dinner alone, and then they'd end up in the same restaurant with all of his friends. And so he clearly couldn't hear her. And what we got her to was, if that's what you want to create, why don't you create it? Why are you waiting for him?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she started creating it. And then guess what? He started creating magical getaways for them to go to Italy to the opera and things like that. So it's a really cool thing. I have a client who's an executive in a media company, and she wanted to become a product manager in this company that she was in. And I said, well, how long will it take you to, what's the career track for that? How long will it take you? And she said, 4 to 5 years. Well, we created that in 4 months.
Wow. That kind of
And
speeds
now,
up the process a little bit.
yeah, and
That's
so
awesome.
we collapse time because we are always creating. We're never not creating, Gary. So if you know that you're always creating and you're never not creating, what do you want to create? Stop creating,
Yeah.
stop frosting dog poop, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you want to create? And so I love that we can get people out of their own way simply, easily, efficiently, elegantly, and quickly. Um, and it's not rocket science, and it doesn't have to take 10 years. And I've had clients say to me, you know, one session with you is like 10 years of therapy. I don't know. I've never had therapy. I have no idea.
Well, I think we all can agree that most, I don't want to pigeonhole anybody, but most traditional therapy is kind of like divorce attorneys. You don't want it to end because the gravy train ends,
Right.
right? And so
There's
they'll
no
keep you
reason.
there forever because it's like, why not, right? But you're saying, and one of the lines I loved in your bio was, when you embody that you matter and
Yeah.
everything you say and do matters, everything changes, and you could see the hairs. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, I read that
I've got
and you said it to me, and
goosebumps everywhere when you say that. And
it
it's
just
true.
that just look. I read it and I go, I got to read that again. And I went to my wife and I go, I got to read you this one line because I mean, it's so empowering of a line, and it's probably some of the most difficult things that people have to accept, right?
Right. It's a change of identity. And that's part of my expertise is your identity, because your identity creates your being, and your being creates what you do in the world. And so you want to decide and make a decision, who do I want to be in the world? Because we're all creators, and we have that power. So if you know you're always creating and you're never not creating, why not create something magical and magnificent? Why not take a stand for yourself and be what you were designed to be, rather than letting your dream die within you?
Yeah.
And many people have stopped dreaming because they've been so, especially over the last 4 years with all of the, you know,
Craziness. Yeah, the craziness.
all of the insanity that has been looming around us. And so I think there were some good things that came out of that, in terms of people reevaluating what they were doing with their time and how they were spending their time. But I also feel that connection was lost, identity was lost. There was a lot of loss. Loss of work, loss of work environment, loss of connection, loss of community, loss of freedom, loss of health, death of a significant person in your life. I mean, divorces. I have a friend who, he and his wife got divorced because of sheltering in place, because she had been a flight attendant and she was gone a lot. And when they had to be home together alone, they didn't like each other.
Exactly.
And you know, it's
My
like,
friend's a divorce attorney, and she said those were the most gravy years of her entire 30-year career, was because
I believe it.
people got home and realized, I don't even like this person. I'm out of here, right?
Yeah. And it forced people to tell themselves the truth about some things. And I think that's one of the biggest self-hatred programs that's running on this planet, is lying to yourself, not telling yourself the truth. And I mean, I've been guilty of it. And it's like, you get to a point and you go, well, wait a minute, what am I protecting by this story, this narrative? Because in my world, all events are neutral. And so if I assign meaning to something, somebody didn't call me, so that means they don't like me.
Mhm.
Or that means I'm not being included. or that means I'm not important. Who created that story? You know, and so why not create a story that you love, a life that you love? I mean, my client that I mentioned earlier, that's in Europe, and she and her husband are just having the best time ever, and they're reconnected, and they're living.
But it comes back to the other point, that I love about what you said, and that's the negative programming. I mean, it
Yeah.
starts so early and it's so deep, and it just takes over so much. It like pushes out all what we were born with, just the goodness, the love, the happiness, the joy, right? We're born with
Mhm.
it, right? We come out
Yeah.
usually with that. And then the negative programming, just wears us down eventually, and trying to fight out of that is wicked. It's tough.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because by the time we're 7, we have 95% of our programming and conditioning. And it starts up to 3.5 with the reptilian brain, the lizard brain, the amygdala, which is a real part of your brain. And that's basically where fear and survival live. And then from 3.5 to about 7, we have the limbic coming in, which is really about compassion, but without the capacity to feel feelings. And what's modeled in our culture is overwhelm. So then children are not taught how to feel their feelings, how to stay in their body, how to be present. And then we develop spindle cells when we're teens, which help us to feel our feelings and deal with our emotions. And nobody's talking about that. And so we're born into this society where survival, overwhelm, guilt, shame, are a way of life. And we might have a parent that needs to be perfect, and then we take on the need to be perfect. But the cultural programming in American society is that perfect is impossible. So now if you need to be perfect and perfect's not possible, you're like, there's no solution to that. And I was working with a client the other day, and I can't remember what she had, but needs drive behavior. So we've all been around the person who needs to be heard, and they repeat themselves over and over and over again. And something came up with her, and let me see if I can recall it. It was the need to be acknowledged or appreciated. And so I asked her a very simple question. I said, how would you know you've been acknowledged or appreciated, whatever the word was? And she said, that's a really good question. There's no answer because it's a black hole. So it's driving behavior, like the need to be perfect, the need to be heard. There's no filter. There's no way the person knows that that's available to them. Needs can show up simply like that. They can show up juxtaposed, like I need to be perfect, but perfect's not possible. And then they can show up in a pattern. The biggest pattern I ever found had 11 of these like loops that had been created as a story, a narrative, a construct that the person was living in. I know how to find that stuff and how to shift it and how to neutralize it so it's no longer operational. And that changes lives, and changes lives magically and quickly. And it's so fun.
I love it. Well, I would imagine right when you talk about that gal, and if you do have such deep negative programming, right, and your lens is negative. I mean, everything just is through this negative lens, right? And you're trying to get acceptance, or you're trying to get perfection, or you're trying to get positivity, but your lens is already so twisted negatively, you'll never see any of those things. So no matter how much people pour on you, you still won't see it. You won't be able to accept it. You won't know when you hit perfect, or you won't know when you hit acceptance or appreciation, because your lens doesn't work that way. I mean, how do you
Yeah.
get people to change that
Well,
mindset?
when you shift the energy of not mattering to mattering, and you shift the negative programming. So we have about different people say different numbers, probably be somewhere between 70 and 80,000 thoughts a day. And so let's use 80, and about 80% of those thoughts, unless you're consciously tending to what you're thinking, are negative. And so you're the author, actor, producer, and director of your show. And so what do you, again, it's back to, and you're always creating. So what are you creating? And so I think there are some tools people can use, but like just asking the simple question, why do I believe that? Why do I think that's true? Why am I limiting myself? I had an intention earlier, actually it was back in mid-May, to discover all the ways I was limiting myself. And boy, that was like a wild ride. And so you can just like notice, have an intention, be intentional. Where am I frosting dog poop?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have to be that way, and it's a program. And David Hawkins, years ago, he was an MD, PhD, and I was blessed to study with him. He wrote a book called Power versus Force. And in that book, he talks
What's it
about
called? Power versus what?
Power versus Force.
Oh,
Yeah, his name is Hawkins, Hawkins, David, Dr. David Hawkins. And in the book, he talks about measuring consciousness on the planet. And he had a logarithmic scale. And so a movement of 1 point on that scale was significant because the scale was 0 to 1,000. And 200 was on his scale, the level of courage and integrity. So shame, guilt, anger, violence, lack of integrity, all of those things live below that level. And then the level of 500 was love, 550 unconditional love. And then you went up to the level of 1,000, which was Christ consciousness, enlightenment. And so he said when he did his studies, one person at the level of consciousness of love at 500 offset 750,000 at the lower level. So that makes life really simple. Be love.
right.
Create
Wow.
everywhere you go.
Yeah.
For me, it simplifies everything. What do I need to do? I need to be love. I get to be love.
Thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.